Hi, thanks for joining us. My name is Bill Keogh. I'm the Managing Director of the Supply Chain, Transportation, and Logistics Master's Program here at the University of Washington. My background is I've been a supply chain consultant for about 20 years, and I started the program with Professor Ann Goodchild in Civil and Environmental Engineering about 7 years ago with the specific objective of helping people who are existing supply chain professionals broaden their knowledge of the end-to-end supply chain in order to help themselves develop sort of better career prospects. Veronica?
Yes, hi. My name is Veronica LeClerc, and I am a procurement financial analyst with Boeing. And my background is I've been with Boeing for about 7 years, and I started in supply chain as a supply chain analyst. I was a project manager in supply chain as well, and just moved on to procurement finance.
Great, great. So tell us a little bit about why did you choose this program in the first place?
So I had already an undergrad degree from Portland State University in supply chain, and I was looking for something that would broaden my knowledge and keep myself up to date with the newest things in supply chain. And a lot of it you can probably do on your own just by reading articles here and there, but I wanted to have the school experience and also get a master's degree. So I actually did a lot of research about different schools, and I asked other people that I knew in Boeing what kind of master's degrees they've gotten from. And after a lot of research, I realized that supply chain in the University of Washington was the best program for me. And the reason is two, actually. Number one, it's a cohort, so that means that I get to participate with the same people through all the classes, and we all go together through the whole program, and I really enjoy that part of it. And the second part was this is through a very prestigious university, and I really wanted to have that in my resume. Basically.
Nice. So the program is a little bit different than some other online programs that tend to be largely asynchronous. You may look at something on the web, you may write a paper, you may send it to your professor. And when we developed this program, the idea was to do something a little bit different. I think particularly at the graduate level, students can learn as much from one another as they can from the professor. So we designed the program with 2-hour live online sessions each week. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what your experience has been like, because one of the features of the program is it's sort of work compatible, but by the same token, you have to fit that in with your family and your professional commitment. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience.
I was actually surprised because during the residency week, we got to meet with everybody else in the classroom, and we kind of established friendships. I know that I can reach out to anybody else in the class and ask for help with different projects, and I know that even in my future career, I'll be able to reach out to them again. And we got to meet all the professors. We had a reception where we got to meet the advisory board, lots of very important people. So that was extremely helpful for the whole week. And then after that, the whole program is structured to where you meet once a week for your classes, but it's live sessions where you can see each other, you can see the professors, ask questions. It feels very much like a classroom environment. Except that you don't have to get off the couch, basically. And then the other thing is for the family work-life balance and including school in it. I have 3 children. I have a full-time job, and I was able to fit this in. So it's, but at the same time, feel like I'm getting the full value out of the program.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I was teaching a class last night, and one of the students had a cat on her shoulder. So it enables you to work from your own home or to work from your work environment. So in terms of the balancing the commitments, have you, is there anything in particular you might advise somebody who's contemplating doing this? Because it's a 2-year commitment, and it's a good amount of work.
Yes, I think you just have to look at your schedule and make sure that you understand how much you have to commit to each class. And each class is a little bit different. There's some classes where you have to put a little bit more time than other classes, depending on your previous experience. So for example, our risk management class was very intensive for me because I've never been exposed to it before. However, I got probably the most value out of it. Other classes like inventory management, I was working with inventory before, so I was fairly familiar and it didn't require as much time. However, before we started the class, I always looked through the through what was expected, and I was trying to plan how much time am I able to commit. Work with your family to make sure that they understand that this is the time that you have to set aside for school. And everybody has been very supportive, both family and as well at work.
Okay, great. Well, so I think the program, we tried to design it with a lot of specific features that we thought would be helpful for students in terms of, learning more, but especially advancing their career. One thing we have that I know you're working with me now is the practicum. And the practicum is designed to help students take all the content they have learned and then integrate it to address a real business problem. The same way you would if you were a consultant. So there's finding the problem, there's scoping the problem. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. I know you're only halfway through the process, but we try to make this a really real experience.
Yes, it's actually very interesting because when you start a project, obviously everybody has projects at work. And before I was in this program, I would just kind of approach it just like everybody else around me, and just like, oh, come on, let's get it done. And now when I look at my project, I'm thinking, okay, I know all these things from all these classes that I learned previously. And I have all these tools that help me, like the simulation models that we have, the precision tree software that we worked with, in the facilities design class, how to design things how to make them work better, and just thinking about how to integrate my project to have all these things help develop it better and make it more understandable for my leadership and for all the people that I work with. It's been so helpful.
That's great.
Yeah. Right.
Because ideally what we'd like to be able to turn out are people who are capable of assuming higher leadership positions and people who are capable of going into a complex environment and acting as change agents. And that's not just about knowing what the right thing to do is, right?
No.
It's how do you communicate it? How do you cost justify it? And the final activity in the practicum is the students put together a 10-slide pitch, and they have 20 minutes to get in front of our advisory board, who are very, very senior executives who ask very hard questions sometimes. If you want to see who that is, you can take a look on our website. But so you have that to look forward to.
Absolutely, I am. I think we're going to do a good job.
No, great. Anything you talked about the residency. We talked a little bit about the practicum. Anything else that sticks out in your mind about something that was particularly impactful to you, either from a professional perspective or from an educational perspective?
I think the whole program, like I said before, I used to talk to other people at work. They've done different programs, master programs, and mostly they would say, oh yeah, well, we only have to write the discussion, respond to this, write a paper, and so on. And I think what I think I got the most benefit out of it is that this is very quantitative. It's through the College of Engineering, so it's very engineering focused, which especially working for Boeing, it's very important to have that. So just being able to quantify everything and be everything data driven has helped me a lot in just the way I perceive my role in the company, and it's given me the confidence to go and pursue other jobs, like for example the new job that I just got, which
Great.
is finance. I would have never done that before.
That's good. Yeah, so obviously one of the key objectives and what a lot of students want to take away from the program is the opportunity to advance in their careers, to assume more senior roles. And one of the ways, I'm firmly convinced that one of the ways that works best is to build a professional network where you will hear about opportunities, where people can give you advice, I know we have a sort of growing alumni network too, all of whom are happy to take a phone call from anybody who's in the program. We had one student one time who I think worked for FedEx, and he said, I love cars. I've always wanted to work for a car company. And I said, well, it's interesting. We just have a student who just took a job at Tesla. Why don't you give him a ring and see what kind of advice he could give you? So maybe could you talk a little bit about any kind of networking opportunities you've taken advantage of? Because that's one of the things we try to emphasize.
Yes. Well, you have the mentor program. So I was connected to a mentor, and I got a chance to talk to her about her job and what she's doing. And you're basically, because it's supply chain, you have so many opportunities to learn about, purchasing or contracting, or there's just so many areas, right? Not just, you don't just focus on one thing. So being paired with a mentor and listening to what they're doing and how they're excited and passionate about that makes you think like, oh, maybe I would want to try that. Maybe that's something that I would want to do in the future. And then, once you have this, maybe we can talk about it a little bit later if you want to. But honestly, I've had this on my resume, and people always ask me, "What do you do? How is this different than your undergrad degree?" And it's incredible. It's very different because of the focus that it has. Like I said before, the quantitative one. So. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And I think with the mentoring program, the students actually sort of apply, so to speak, to indicate an interest. They also specify, like I really want to work with somebody who's a senior person in procurement or whatever it might be. And then we do our very best to pair the students up with those folks. Usually they're pretty senior people. They're, like a director of operations at a major manufacturing company, maybe a person who runs all the materials management for a very large manufacturing company. So it's a unique opportunity to get paired with somebody you might not meet otherwise.
Yeah.
What about anything else in terms of advice or, for somebody who might be contemplating this kind of experience?
I think you should do your research, see what other schools offer, make sure you read the curriculum, and then make your decision. But I've done that, and this has been by far the best option. In fact, a couple of people that I talked to previously that took masters from other colleges, and I explained what we're doing here, they were like, oh, gosh, I wish it was around when I was doing it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, so why don't we do this? Maybe we could take an opportunity if we have any questions. Can you read that?
Yeah.
Why don't you just
from Edwin,
okay.
How easy it is to work on Teams since everybody is in a different place? How easy is to get to classes? What kind of platform you use? So we use Adobe Connect in class, where we get together and we can see our professor, we can ask the questions. The whole lecture happens online. We can IM each other as we need to, or even IM to everyone. Then outside of class, it's fairly easy. My team and we would meet using Google Hangouts. I don't think we've ever had trouble meeting. And my group member right now, Jaya, she lives in Chicago. So she's 3 hours ahead, and she's extremely accommodating. I will call her like at 7 o'clock at night and Pacific time, which is 10 o'clock. Her. So.
Yeah, I'm working with one team on the practicum where one guy is actually in Northern Ireland, which 5 o'clock Pacific time is kind of difficult for him, but he's a good guy. I think one of the other things that you didn't mention is with the online platform, the instructor can see all the students. So, which is really helpful, right? As a student, you got to make sure you're not have your mouth full of a sandwich when somebody calls on you. So I can call on the student and their face just appears on the screen. So that really facilitates the whole interactive experience, I think.
Yeah, and especially if you don't drink beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the students were called out on that, so. Another question, do most students have engineering or STEM backgrounds? I don't believe so. I think we probably have a couple of industrial engineers in our class, but most students have a supply chain background.
Yeah, I would say it breaks up about a third, because you could be in supply chain but have an engineering background, especially at Boeing, right? There are people who are engineers who are in supply chain. It's about a third engineering background, about a third business background, and then a third sort of miscellaneous. Some people come to supply chain from very different academic backgrounds.
How does the residency week work? So the residency week, you come on campus, which is extremely beautiful. If you haven't been here before, I was totally shocked. I took lots of pictures. And then you get to meet, it's just a normal classroom, but it's 40 hours. It's a whole week. It's almost like going to work. And you get to spend all this time with your peers. You get to really meet, understand what they're doing. You get to work together on projects to really understand your weaknesses and your strengths, maybe even build teams right then. I think this was probably the most important part of the entire program, because that's when I knew who to reach out to for different things when I had problems. And the residency week also has the reception on the third day, I think it was for us. And that's when we got to get together, drink some wine.
Yeah, and also to meet our advisory board. So in the residency, part of it is academic, like you mentioned, but I think the most important part of it is for the people in the cohort to meet one another, because it's one thing to work online with somebody you've never met. It's a very different thing if you know the person, maybe you've been in a team with them.
Yeah, and you know what I appreciated the most? That you took the time to get us each out of the room in a separate room, and you talked to us and asked us, what is your future? How do you see your future?
Right.
And are you interested in getting jobs, different kind of jobs? And that was really fantastic. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's great. And the reason I do that is I learned this after the first year. I think when I have people from recruiting firms or people who are hiring at big companies call me, I want to make sure I know what you're interested in. I know if you want to move, and I have some idea of what you're looking to make. So
the individual care, I guess.
Right.
It is. It feels like it. It feels like everybody knows you in the program. It feels like, such a small setting. It feels like you belong, and that people care about you. And if you're going to meet them 10 years from now, they'll remember you. They won't just walk by you. So.
Right. Yeah. A couple of the other things we do with the residency that are not strictly academic, but last year we took a tour of one of Amazon's highly automated warehouses down south of Seattle, which was very difficult to get. Ann and I met somebody who was essentially, I think he was a fifth employee at Amazon. So he had a lot of weight there, and he was able to get us in the door. Pretty impressive stuff. We also do a tour of the port of Seattle.
Oh, that was fantastic.
It's essentially a cruise, right?
Yeah,
so everybody gets on the boat, and you get to see the port actually from the ocean, which is pretty interesting. And then you mentioned the cocktail party with the advisory board. So our advisory board shows up. We're at the UW Club, which is a nice venue on campus, and it's an opportunity to get up and talk to people you probably wouldn't meet otherwise. So
I think we did also an alcohol distribution center, our cohort.
Right.
And that was very interesting. And okay, how much time do you spend on coursework outside of class? It depends on the class, like I said before. If it's something that you're familiar with, the subject, probably, maybe 3-4 hours a week. If it's something you're not familiar with, I think I was probably spending 15 hours a week, but that was just one class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, the point you brought up is good. This is different than undergrad, right, where everybody is sort of a blank page. Here, I think the average experience is about 7 years of experience. We take people with more and less. But all these people have done certain jobs, so some of them know a lot about inventory.
Yes.
I teach an IT systems class. There were some people who I give them a survey, and one of them's like, I know how to turn on my computer. And the other one is, I used to be an IT architect. And there were 2 people who said they were IT architects. I'm like, if that's the case, you can chill for a couple of weeks, because you're probably not going to learn anything. So for those people, the IT systems class was not that difficult. For somebody who only knows how to turn on their computer, that was probably difficult, but they could take an inventory course. And like you said, if they've done that as a job, that's much easier.
What has been your favorite class so far? Well, Bill's class, obviously.
Of course.
I think my favorite class, and I didn't expect myself to ever say that, it was the finance class with Dan. It was very engaging, and he made finance fun, if you can imagine that.
Yeah, he's a genius.
He is. And, speaking of genius, I find myself every time I sit at the computer, and we have a class, and people start talking or responding to questions, I was like, oh my God, that person's so smart. Yeah, you get to hang out with really smart people, and some of it rubs off on you, so it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Any more questions?
How many students are in each cohort? In our cohort, I think we have 25.
Yeah, and that's a little bit low. I think we have about 35 in the current one. So
I like the 25.
You like the 25?
Yes, it's very, I love it. Yeah, we get to talk to each other quite a bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you have all these opportunities to meet outside of school for social hours, and that's when you get to meet again with people from your cohort and alumni, or people from the ones that are just starting, or people from the cohort ahead of you.
Right,
on where you're at, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. We have an alumni network that's very active, and they're actually having an event this Friday. If you're in Seattle at, I think, the Flat Stick Pub, you can take a look. We have further information about this on Facebook and other places. But yeah, if you want to go meet some alums and get a flavor of what the program is like, that would be a good opportunity for you to do so. There are quite a few events like that take place.
And that's where you ask your questions. What are you doing for your next project?
Good. Do we see one more?
How competitive is admission? I think that's a question for you.
Sure. Well, this depends on how many applications we get, right? Sometimes we get a lot, sometimes we don't get as many. It's a pretty normal process. The admissions is competitive. If you have a really strong background, especially with work experience, especially being able to articulate your experience on the application. There's one question, is like, what is the most challenging supply chain or logistics issue you've addressed in your career? That tells us a lot about somebody's capabilities. So yeah, I mean, by and large, it is competitive. There's no question about that. But for the most part, we do see a lot of qualified folks. So.
And I think I took quite a bit of time to prepare my application,
right.
But I've heard people that were probably not as thorough and still kind of did a good job and put it together.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we have people from all different backgrounds.
Yes.
So, and basically we look at it in a holistic fashion. So it's not just, I have a really high grade point average. It's everything put together.
I had a really.
Yeah, well, you're very smart. Yeah.
When are admissions due?
Okay, so there's
there's
a priority deadline, March 1st. If you're interested, I would strongly encourage you to do that. We basically take the people who are qualified right then, and so those folks lock up quite a few spaces in the program. And then the deadline after that is in May. If you take a look on the website, there's a lot of information. And if there's something you can't find out, you can reach out to one of us directly.
How does this program differ from an MBA?
We could both answer that maybe.
I think from my point of view is I wanted to have something more, I want to have a little more technical experience. I wasn't quite ready to jump into management. So for me, an MBA didn't really make sense. And it's a lot more, I think, more focused on people development. And for me, it was, I want to go into the technical part of it a lot more and passionate about supply chains.
Right. I think the fact that it's housed in engineering and that it's, very quantitative, you're thinking about operations in terms of network optimization, things like that you might not dive into in business school so much. I also think that an MBA used to be very unique, right? If you had an MBA, people would look at you and say, wow. Now I think there's more and more a trend towards specialization in degrees. So obviously a master's in supply chain is more specialized than an MBA. And this program, again, is more specialized than a master's in supply chain, right? This is a quantitative program that focuses on the role of transportation and logistics in the end-to-end supply chain. A long answer.
How updated is the program according to industry standards.
How updated, is that what it is?
Yes.
So I think with a few exceptions, the people who teach in the program are all practitioners. So these are people who, worked like Dan Stull, he worked in mergers and acquisitions. I've been in operations for a long time working with real companies. So all the people who are teaching are actual practitioners. So sometimes what it says in the book and what's going on in the real world are sometimes not the same thing. And so I think you have people who are bringing very practical experience to bear, who have stories to tell you sometimes that are very enlightening. Also, I think all the professors try to bring in sort of the most current content and help you figure out how does that fit in, things like, from an IT perspective or a collaboration perspective, things like blockchain, the Internet of Things. That's one example.
No, it's true. Before I came to the program, I think I felt a little bit backwards. So how does this program change the way you see your career? I am definitely more confident in trying new things. And in fact, I feel like I'm behind. I feel like, oh my gosh, now I have to catch up with everything. So I do a lot more reading. And I see myself being able to apply to probably jobs or even maybe go into management later on. And I'm a lot more confident about that.
Right. That's good. And I mean, we encourage people to explore other options, right? If you're in procurement and maybe you're interested in strategic sourcing or something else, usually there's somebody either in the program, on our advisory board, one of our mentors, there's somebody who's either doing that or has done that. And a lot of times, making a phone call like that can save you a lot of time. They might tell you some things where you say, wow, that's not interesting. Or they might say, talk to this person, to help you understand a little bit more about how it works.
Does someone need to have an engineering background to get into this program since it's offered by the engineering department? Okay,
so that's a good question. The answer to that is no, you don't necessarily need to be an engineer. However, you need to be comfortable with numbers. You need to be comfortable with equations, and one of the requirements is having taken statistics or calculus. So if numbers are not your thing and quantitative analysis is not your thing, this might not be the right solution for you. But that being said, you don't have to be an engineer per se.
I love numbers.
You like that part? Yeah, that's good. Okay. Is there anything else?
Are there opportunities to engage with alumni?
Yeah, there's one this Friday if you'd like to do that. But typically, I get pinged by people like the fellow with the car example, and some of those people may be in companies you're interested in. They may be doing jobs you're interested in. They may have past experience that you're interested in. So there's a lot of opportunities to get connected with the alumni network.
And then can you talk about a practicum project?
Well, you already talked a little bit about it, and I think I did too. I mean, just to reiterate, the idea is to define a specific problem within your current company that you believe you could solve within a limited amount of time. The idea is, and we've had this happen where, these are real things. These aren't made up problems. And we've had these things implemented in several companies where the students put together essentially the business case of, what kind of return could I get? How would it work? How do I manage risk? And actually pitch this to their leadership team. And the leadership team has said, hey, that's a good idea. Do it.
Are there placement opportunities?
So our program is a little bit different than like an MBA program where everybody is, full-time at school and we have a career fair at the end. It's not really like that because everybody in the program is already employed. So people have their current jobs. A lot of times people are interested in moving to new jobs. And so the way this works is we're plugged in with several recruiting firms here who are focused solely on supply chain. So I think very much this, because as you mentioned, right, the program is there's a lot of personal touch to it. So, I mean, I meet with everybody in the cohort when you come for the residency week. I get to know you. I get to know what you're looking for. And that way, when opportunities come up, I can say, wow, Veronica's ideal for that. All right, are you interested? And I'll send out an email like, are you interested in this? Yeah. Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. Sometimes it's I told you I'm looking for a job, but I'm not anymore. But so that's sort of how the career development works.
Veronica, are you using what you are learning in your day job? Absolutely, every day. Every day. It's crazy.
That's great.
I feel like now more than ever because before, not that I didn't have some education, obviously I had a bachelor's, but I didn't exactly know how to apply to my job. And here, because you integrate your projects from your work into your school, it works back and forth basically. So then you bring your school into your work and it's pretty amazing, actually.
Right. Yeah. I think this is what we strive for, right? Because the people who are teaching, they're not going to teach you stuff that you're not going to use, right? I mean, they're going to teach you stuff that's practical. And I know I had one student who lived in Seattle, and I think he had an interview with a company down in San Francisco. And he said during the interview, they were really talking about implementing this ERP system, Enterprise Resource Planning System. And the fact that we were talking about that in your class, I was able to speak very knowledgeably about that. And he said, and I think that helped me get that job. So that's just one example. We strive to make sure you're learning stuff that's relevant.
It helps you step out of what your day-to-day job is and understand how it impacts like the outside world,
right,
and how the outside world impacts your job, basically.
Right. Great. Okay, well, I think we're at 12:30. So thank you all for your attention. And like I said, if you want to reach out to us, it's clear how to do so on the website. If you'd like to talk to me about your objectives and whether the program might be a fit for you, you can do that too. Just send an email to the address on the website and we'll get something set up.
Thank you.